This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. We talk about raising money a lot, and we talk about how to do that through different platforms or growing your business and scaling. And so often it seems like, you're right, it's through social media. We can find ways to, sit in the office, right, and be productive as opposed to more productive for your time and maybe your money as versus traveling to many conferences. But one platform that just continues to come forward from many ways, in many ways, is LinkedIn, right? And so many people, I think, are finding success using LinkedIn and diving in on that. We have not done that great in our business, and I hope we can do it better. However, our guest today is an expert in just that and in many other parts of marketing, which he'll get into some, but we're going to focus on LinkedIn. His name is Scott Hawksworth. He's a 15-year marketing veteran who helps B2B companies build amazing brands, massive audiences, and helps high performance marketing funnels. He builds those as well. But after helping scale and lead generation startup that successfully exited to a private equity group, he joined what's called the WealthChannel team. And at WealthChannel, Scott manages multiple industry leading brands and directs the strategy and execution of the company's organic marketing efforts. Scott's professional skill set includes aspects of business to business marketing, including branding, SEO, social media, content creation, PPC, and conversion optimization. We dive into LinkedIn specifically, and he lays out some 3 or 4 strategies that any of us can use on LinkedIn. And some of it you may have heard of before. I bet there's a few things that you have not heard of before. We're going to dive into tracking and automation or mistakes that are commonly made when using LinkedIn as well. Scott, welcome to the show. Honored to have you on. I'm looking forward to learning a lot from you today on the marketing front and how to do that well.
Oh, thanks, Whitney. Excited to be here.
Yeah, honored to have you. Scott, I know 15 years in marketing. I mean, you've done a lot with organic marketing, and you are you know things about how to get in front of high net worth individuals that I'd like to know. All right. I know
absolutely.
many of the listeners would as well. I want to dive into that. But how did you get into that? What was before that for Scott? Before you started WealthChannel, some of those things. What were you doing? And let's get to where we're at today.
Yeah, so I've been really doing digital marketing since I was about 16 years old in high school, just working on blogs and things like that. And I really cut my teeth on sort of the SEO side of things, the just organic showing up in search. And from there, I graduated. I went to the Ohio State University, graduated with my business degree, and then I joined a startup in the online education space that was all about online lead generation. And again, using those, using websites and lead generation through organic search. So we had an exit there. It was acquired by a private equity group there. And from there, I sort of moved on. And around that time, and certainly while I was working at that company, that's when Web 2.0 really started its meteoric rise. You had Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, which we're going to talk about a lot here today. All of those started to really come on the scene. And from sort of the SEO side, it really became clear that marketing is just so much more than one channel. And if you're doing organic marketing, you need to hit all touch points, whether you're creating content, whether you're just trying to grow your own following and your own reach. All of these platforms are important. And so I continued to sort of learn about that and apply that to what I was doing. Then I eventually joined a B2B payment startup in the payments industry. And they asked me to start a podcast about payments. And from there, that's really where I started focusing on LinkedIn itself, because I was hosting a podcast where I was interviewing experts from all over the payments and fintech world. And how could I, find those people, find great guests to interview, and also reach our target audience of professionals in payments. And so then from there, I did that for about 215 episodes. It's still going. It's got a new host. It's going great. And I ended up then joining Wealth Channel. And so through all of these pieces, I've really been focusing on that organic side and how do you leverage your content? How do you leverage your message? How do you reach people without necessarily having to, pay for leads?
How do you reach people without having to pay for leads? That's what we're all looking for, right?
Right, exactly.
Wow. Well, let's dive into that. First, what is Wealth Channel? What is that? And we'll dive into some of the marketing that's helping you and Wealth Channel. But what is Wealth Channel?
Yeah, so Wealth Channel is a community for high net worth investors, and specifically accredited investors. And that's folks that they earn more than $200,000 a year individually for the last 2 years, or $300,000 as a couple, or they have a net worth in excess of 1 million. And really, it's a community for those folks to connect and learn about growing and protecting their wealth. And what we do at Wealth Channel is we have podcasts, which I'm the producer of, and we just kind of share thought leadership, information, the latest happenings in what's going on in the investing world. And then we also have events that we put on where sponsors can present directly to our audience with private equity opportunities that they can invest in.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's dive into some of your specialties. And I know, you're very big on LinkedIn, right? And it being such a powerful platform. Why don't you break down a little bit why LinkedIn is such a powerful platform for lead generation, branding, and marketing?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. And I'm going to throw some stats at you here. I've got them in front of me. But the big thing with LinkedIn, I think right off the bat, is different than Twitter, Instagram, or some of these other platforms. LinkedIn, sort of plants its flag in we are for business. We are for working professionals. That is what our platform is for. And so I think right off the bat, if you're into any kind of B2B space, you're into B2B marketing, you're looking for leads and folks that are maybe like for us, high net worth individuals. LinkedIn is sort of a lightning rod for that. It naturally attracts that. But some statistics for you if you're talking about like lead generation. So LinkedIn generated the highest visitor to lead conversion rate at 2.74%, which is almost 3 times higher than both Twitter and Facebook. And that was according to a HubSpot study. So right there, you're saying, wow, the conversion rates on LinkedIn as a platform alone like just dwarf those of other social media platforms. Members on LinkedIn have 2 times the buying power of the average online audience. And then actually a piece here that I thought was really fascinating as I was, researching this and wanting to get you some statistics there. 44% of users on LinkedIn earn more than $75,000 a year, and 41% of millionaires use LinkedIn. So 4 in 10 millionaires are using LinkedIn right now. So for us, that's just massive. That just shows you where that audience is and how powerful that is. And then I really think for anyone, whether it's you're looking to raise capital, whether you're a realtor, that shows you the power and the sophistication of the audience on LinkedIn. And I think that's kind of where it starts for us, especially when we're working with sponsors as well and all of these other businesses that are also active on LinkedIn. I think there's more than 58 million companies are listed on LinkedIn currently, and I think that's growing every day. So that just shows you, if you're talking about the power of an audience, where it is.
How does, using LinkedIn fit just in the marketing strategy, maybe for Wealth Channel? You could use that as an example, but help us to, as operators, obviously we're trying to get in front of those high net worth investors, all the time, right? It's such a big part of our business. How should it fit in the overall just marketing strategy?
Sure. I think one, you just want to have a presence. That's kind of the first step. So it can help with just having that presence there where, wherever someone might be, people use different platforms, they go to your website. If they're on LinkedIn, then you have that presence. So I think that's how that can help with that strategy. How it helps us is, we create content, we create podcasts, videos, and we want to be able to use that content to reach as many people as possible. So LinkedIn specifically allows us to do that and more directly get in front of that audience. That's how it can kind of fit into that strategy, because you're creating content and then you chop it up and then you want to put it on all of these platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, what have you. And so that's really kind of key to our strategy there. And then when you kind of look back, and if you're just saying, well, lead generation, how does it fit with that? You have, with LinkedIn, you have LinkedIn groups, you can have newsletters. There's the premium subscriptions with LinkedIn, things like Sales Navigator. All of those tools are there, and they can be sort of a part of your arsenal if you're trying to reach individuals. I'm constantly getting messages on LinkedIn, and that's really powerful too, because email inboxes are so full these days. People are on, a million different newsletters. Well, LinkedIn, I'm in a professional mode, and hey, I just got a message from someone who wants to connect. Maybe there's a way we can work together, or maybe they have a product or service that I might be interested in. That kind of thing is where it really fits sort of into the overall, I guess, strategy.
Let's dive into some effective strategies. Like, how are you all using LinkedIn? I know there's those different, different add-ons that we can, we could dive into, but maybe give us some examples of some strategy, I guess be as specific as possible and
Yeah.
as, as deep as you can, as far as, helping the listener to really think through, okay, I could do these four things, whatever it may be, to help them use it effectively.
Sure. So, number one, you want to make posts where you kind of, like any social media, there's really that personal touch. So, if it's an individual or a company, kind of having that, here's who we are, if it's a company, or if I'm an individual, here's who I am. So, if I make a post and I'm providing some thought leadership, I think that really fits into both sales cycles and lead generation cycles. I love this. There's this analogy where you're at a party, right? So you're at a party. You have two options. You might see someone, and you're looking into real estate. You see just a billboard. Okay, well, that's one touch point. You maybe don't even know that person. But if you had that same person, you met them at a party, and they go and you start talking with them, and they give you a piece of advice, like, oh, I live in Chicago. Oh, this area is really up and coming. This is a great neighborhood. You should look into it. Well, when I go and I'm trying to think, okay, I got to go get a realtor. I want to go buy a house. I'm going to remember that person who gave me that piece of advice. So using LinkedIn, you can do things like that to sort of build your personal brand. Hey, here's a tip I picked up. Hey, here's a perspective I have, whether I'm making a video or a text post. Then you kind of have your network growing there, and so then when it comes time, people will remember you and they'll connect with you that way. I think that's a really powerful strategy. For us, the way we use LinkedIn is we have guests that are on our podcasts that are providing thought leadership. And so we do that to really leverage that content and have folks like, wow, I just learned something about investing. Andy Hagan's the host of the Alternative Investment Podcast. He has great guests from all over the world. And if someone has a great takeaway, well, they'll check us out. They'll maybe sign up and join our email list. They'll subscribe to the podcast. And then when it comes time to have an event where we want investors to show up and view presentations from sponsors, it's just a lot easier. And that touch point started at LinkedIn. I think that's one of the big sort of strategies we have. Additionally, the consistency and the growth. So if you're posting at least once a day, that is really, really important to be consistent. I think a lot of folks don't necessarily do that. They think, well, I'm on this platform, I'll post occasionally, and that'll be enough. But what you really want to do is grow your network, and you want to appear in search results. You want to appear in other feeds, and that requires consistency. Another one of our strategies is to not necessarily just sort of shout into the void and only post our things, but whether it's me using my personal LinkedIn, I'm always commenting on other posts. If there's something insightful and then maybe I can add to the conversation, participating in that conversation is another great way. So if you're trying to reach people in a specific industry or in real estate, where are those conversations happening? Is there a viral post that's going on about interest rates? The Fed just bumped rates again. Oh, there's a lot of conversation happening on this. Well, if you have something you can contribute, go ahead and post there, make a comment. That's how you can then have people find you and connect with you, and then maybe ultimately, enter that sales cycle or become a lead for you.
Yeah, no, that's some great examples. Posting and the consistency part. You said once per day. That can seem pretty overwhelming for most, right? How do we be creative about posting something every day? I know you mentioned commenting on others' posts and participating in other conversations, and maybe are you considering that part of it when you say posting? Is that including commenting and things like that as well, or do you mean making your own posts, actual post every day?
Yeah, good question. I kind of consider them separate. So if you're posting on your feed, that's like one post per day. And then the comment is that's just more like activity.
Yeah,
Now, I would say in a perfect world, you're doing both. But if you can't, and
right.
obviously the folks are busy, like you can't necessarily only do that. Well, if you can do one or the other, then you're at least consistently engaging with LinkedIn and on the platform. And I think it's such a great question. Well, how do I do this? That seems overwhelming. How do I make this? It can be as simple as just sharing a stray thought you had, or an exciting experience you had, oh, hey, just closed on this house. How exciting. There's a picture of you with the client. I think those kinds of things are how you can maybe work it into your workflow, and use it like any other social media platform. Folks post on Facebook, they post on Instagram, they're at the bar, oh, I had a great drink, this is a fantastic cocktail. Though that type of activity is really not that hard to do on LinkedIn, and you can even cross post. If you made a tweet, well, why not just take that tweet and post it on LinkedIn as well? And then the other beautiful thing with LinkedIn too is that there are just so many opportunities for connections. So if you're on there, what I've found happens is you'll just get connection requests, and they'll drop an email into your inbox and you say, oh, hey, so and so wanted to connect. Well, now you're on the platform. Maybe all you need to do is connect with them, and then you can already comment on their post and say, hey, great to connect with you. I think that's the way you sort of build that consistency in. And it doesn't have to be this sort of sweeping post. Yes, long form posts are great. Videos are great if you can do them. But even just having a little bit of an activity like, hey, here's this great article I read, or hey, I was just listening to a great episode of the Real Estate Syndication Show. Wow, what a fantastic insight. And then you drop that link in there. That is pretty easy to do. And then you're kind of providing that value that I was talking about.
Are there any ways to automate any of this that you've come up with, or any software, or I don't know, any ways that you've found to simplify this process a little bit, but to still gain traction on something like LinkedIn?
Yeah, so we don't do any sort of automation, but what I do is when I'm posting on LinkedIn or kind of coming up with that is I have a content calendar and I have a schedule, and you can schedule posts on LinkedIn. So it's the kind of thing where you could even get a spreadsheet together, which is actually what I use. And okay, here's our dates. I'm going to post something like this. I'm going to post something like this. And then if you have a few hours on a Saturday or even an hour, and you just kind of schedule your upcoming week, and then you just sort of let it run. I've found that that can kind of help with the consistency, is if you sort of say, okay, I'll just create a schedule and have a game plan and then schedule it all out, as opposed to just kind of doing everything on the fly. Because I think oftentimes we get so busy, that's how you sort of forget about it. Like, oh, I didn't post, but oh, I have a schedule. Oh, right, I already scheduled it. Great. I think that's one of the big strategies I use.
So I could record a video, or I could just create some posts just out of text, um, and schedule them a week in advance.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And if you're using an image or a video or whatever the piece of media might be, you go ahead and just schedule it out.
Yeah. I think I love things like that at least because then I don't have to think about it all week, right?
Right.
I could time block, let's say an hour or so Monday or even Friday the week before or something like that, and it's done for the next week.
Right. And to me, I love the strategy of sort of doing both and. So if you schedule things out, but then you also, let's say you do happen to be at a conference or something, big is happening. We recently were at a Blue Vault Alt Summit in Atlanta, and we did a lot of posts when we were down there. I was posting pictures of our table and all of this. If you do things on the fly and then you mix it in with the scheduling, that just naturally, I think a lot of people get caught up in the like, oh, I need to automate everything and I will only post at this specific time. But if you mix in, you're using the platform, these platforms will reward you for that behavior.
Yeah. Wow. What about tracking?
Yeah, great question. So tracking, there's lots of tools out there. I know HubSpot has some robust tools. Hootsuite, all these. There's these other tools that you can use for tracking. What I like to do is I've got an assistant who she's fantastic and she helps me out. And every time we make a post, we include in a spreadsheet a link to that post and several days later she'll go back through and she'll look and say, okay, here was the engagement, here's how many comments we got, here's how many likes we got, here's was the post reach. LinkedIn is very, very open and clear about, here's what your engagement is for this post. Here's the impressions you were getting. That's really, really fantastic when you're trying to track things. And that also helps you, why we use a spreadsheet that way is we kind of have historical data. So I can go back and see, wow, posts like this really seem to be doing well. Or if we tagged a guest on the podcast, wow, they're really engaging with this content and sharing it with their audience. That is fantastic. Do we have any more clips that we can get of them to reach even more people because they were a great guest and look, they're engaging with the content. That's where we sort of use the tracking to continually improve.
Yeah, that's great. So ultimately, you have somebody on your team that's going back. Probably, I don't know. You probably have it set whether it's a week later or 4 days later, or something like that, and she's documenting all those things so you can assess which posts are the best and try to figure out why. Right?
Yeah, yeah, and and one thing I would say too about tracking, it's really interesting because it depends on the platform. But one thing I've observed is Twitter posts, they tend to either take off pretty quickly, or they're just like, you got a little engagement. LinkedIn is really interesting in how, depending on the post, sometimes there can just be a really long life cycle of growth for that post. So you could check 2 days later and be like, that wasn't the most successful post we've ever had. Then check 3 days later, and all it took was a few people sharing it, a few key places or commenting on it. And now it's been served up in all these other feeds because LinkedIn really loves to show that network activity. If you're connected to somebody and they comment on some other article, there's a good chance that that's going to show up in your feed.
Yeah, that's awesome. Switching gears just a little bit. Actually, before we do that, I wanted to ask you a few of the biggest mistakes you see people use LinkedIn for, or how they market on LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah. So number one is the lack of consistency that we were talking about before. That is just a killer. You're just not going to get the most out of the platform if you don't have some kind of consistency with it. And I think that's true for all social media. Some people, they kind of just throw a post up and they're like, I did it, I got there. It's like, yes, but you're only doing half the battle. These platforms reward consistency. So that's number one. Number two, and I think this is a really big mistake that folks make, taking people off site always, like in every post. So every post is a link to an external site. Every post is a link to a competing social media site, trying to send someone to Facebook or try to send someone to YouTube or try to send someone to Twitter. That is a mistake because if you're just doing that, you're kind of going against what LinkedIn, the company, wants you to do. They want people on site. They want them being active on LinkedIn. So that doesn't mean don't ever post, external links or things like that. Of course, you want to do that, but think about ways that you can make posts that will keep people on site. So upload that video directly to LinkedIn. Make that long form text post that is designed to really get a lot of engagement and discussion because you have a particular perspective or something that you wanted to share. Keep people interacting with your content on LinkedIn, because then when we're talking organically, LinkedIn's algorithms are going to notice that. They're going to say, oh, wow, this page has getting a lot of activity and it's keeping people on LinkedIn. And that's what we want. So mixing that in with, of course, external links and things like that, that's really a key. Because if you're just using it to send people off site, you're kind of fighting half the battle there. And then lastly, not fully engaging on the platform. And we were talking about that earlier, Whitney, but doing more than just posting and shouting into the void. Comment on other articles, react to other things, have conversations. The folks I see on, and this is really could go for any platform, it could go for Twitter, Instagram. The folks I see that have consistently the best engagement, the best growth, they get that in part because they are active on those platforms. They're doing more than just, hey, here's my sales post. They're doing more than, hey, here's this new article I wrote on a different site. They're interacting with it, and they're interacting with others, because I think that's the other piece. It's social media. And so if you're not using it socially, if you're not building relationships on the platform and interacting with people either that that you've met personally and know well, or even people that you might just know on the platform itself, you're really you're missing a big piece of the sauce for success.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it is. It takes time, right? It is a commitment, and it's almost like you are building relationships through social media, and people are returning the favor often. I think, right, by commenting on your posts and helping engagement on your posts as well as you've done for them.
Right. Well, and there's the snowball effect too, because all of these, again, all these platforms, they have algorithms. So if you start reacting to everything, if I'm reacting to everything that you're doing, well, they're going to start serving up more of your stuff to me, because they're like, oh, this guy loves everything Whitney's posting on LinkedIn. And that's a two-way street. And that's how you can really, if you get enough people doing that, and you're showing up in enough feeds, that's where things become pretty special.
How do you keep up with all the notifications? Like I struggle with that. Some like I can't you know what I mean? It's like, man, if I go on there to be active, just like you're talking about, it's like sometimes it's like, where do I even begin? To get all that done. And honestly, I get to where I don't want to spend so much time on social media personally, you know.
No,
So
that's a huge thing, and I think it's a really great point. I try to just clear my notifications out, and I sort of have, whether I'm on LinkedIn or Twitter, I sort of have my internal, like, oh, I've got a bunch of notifications. I'm going to click the button, go through. And at this point, I'm pretty quick of like, okay, this is valuable. This is spam. Blah, blah, blah. I want to talk to this person. And I just kind of clear them out. I think that kind of feeds into the sort of consistency, because if you're on the platform, most days, then you can clear your notifications out. And maybe it doesn't kind of become that big, ugly gorilla that I know we've all felt. I've got that with my inbox sometimes where I'm like, I think that the consistency can really help with that. And then, what you can also do is you can always just sort of declare notification bankruptcy. I've done that before, where it's like, I've just got so many notifications. I don't think any of these are important right now. I'm just gonna clear them out and move on. I think
yeah, yeah.
that's a valid thing to do from time to time if you need to.
Are you switching gears a little bit? Are you able to share anything like what investors are saying on the Wealth Channel right now as far as investing in real estate, or if they're holding off, or what they expect in the next, 12 to 18 months, or I don't know, anything that you could share that you can see as a trend from what you all are hearing?
Yeah, we actually recently had one of our events, and we were really pleased. It was all about opportunity zones. We were really pleased with the turnout at that event and the engagement that we had. We were kind of surprised. I mean, I think that we've all sort of expected there's this little bit of pullback, and I think there's so much uncertainty. but this also is creating such opportunity. And so what we've seen of investors is that there still is this interest. There's still those, we're talking about real estate, those core, I guess, benefits of real estate, the ongoing housing shortage that we have wherever you look in the country, that's really pronounced depending on the market. All of those elements are still true. Those still exist. And so I think investors are still looking to find those opportunities to invest in. I think where we've seen not hesitancy, but I think that there's more scrutiny happening, more deal scrutiny, because I think people are, rightfully so, they're wanting to be careful about what they're investing in. And I think given the landscape, we've seen that, but we've still seen, a lot of confidence in especially established sponsors, folks that have those proven track records, markets where the the demographics are not lying, the populations are growing, whatever it might be. We're still seeing a lot of that.
All right, Scott, a few final questions. But what are some of the most important metrics that you track? Could be personally or professionally.
So on LinkedIn.
Well, it could be your bench press record, or it could be anything that, is like, man, this is important for me to track every day. It could be, I sometimes say bench press record, or how many times you get out of bed on time, or how many deals you all are underwriting. It could be what Scott considers are some of the most important metrics that he needs to track.
Oh, I love that. That's a great question. So I think for me, one big metric is just anything I'm doing is, are we growing? Is my reach going? As a marketer, if we're not growing, then something's gone wrong and I'm not doing my job. So, is our email list growing? Are our social media channels growing? Is my personal social media channel growing? I've got a Twitter account, I've got a LinkedIn. How many followers am I gaining? If I'm seeing all of that sort of in aggregate grow, then that means, on a daily basis, I'm like, okay, I'm moving forward. I think sometimes with metrics, especially when we talk about marketing and followings and, personal branding, you can get so in the weeds with, oh, well, I didn't hit this number. But I like to try to take that 360-degree view of, okay, well, where's the trend? And if the trend's going up, then you're doing the right thing. And then I guess, the other metric I like to track is I want to be a top 10% dad. I've got a little girl, she's 3 years old. And one metric I have is how much quality time am I getting with her on a daily basis? Her name's Charlotte. Did I hang out with her today? Great. Was I at the office too long and I only read a couple books before bed? All right, well, I gotta get better tomorrow, and we're gonna spend some more time together. I think that's a really important metric, because that for me is my work-life balance metric.
I appreciate you sharing that. I also have a 3-year-old daughter, and it definitely changes things in a big way. I have 2 older boys too, but man, girls are different. Right? Yeah, I love the relationship with my little girl. But I appreciate you sharing that. I feel like it's so important that is something as parents that we're thinking about, right? We are tracking things like our growth in all kinds of different ways, but often we don't track things like that or think about that enough. So I appreciate you shedding light on that as well. Any other habits that you may have, Scott, that have produced a higher return for you?
Yeah, waking up earlier. That's something that I kind of struggled with. I spent a lot of time, certainly when I was in college, I was sleeping in and all of this, and I have seen so many just gains in my life from waking up earlier and getting started in the morning. I heard this quote. I believe it was Cody Sanchez that said it. But I've never seen a problem that couldn't be solved by waking up at 5 a.m. Now, I don't think you need to necessarily, everybody has to wake up at 5 a.m. But I think the point is that sort of that time in the morning, even before I head into the office, sometimes I can get a little something done. I can, spend 15, 20 minutes with my daughter. I can do so much more. I kind of fit it in. And I think that for me, that has been something that has been really helpful, and I've continued to sort of plug away at.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. That's been so beneficial for myself and my wife over the last, I would say 5 years ago, we both got in a better routine of just both being up early and together. And that's been so beneficial for us in business and personal life. I mean, it's just been really good to have a plan. Even if you can plan a little bit the night before, I found is, and it doesn't have to be anything major detail, but at least like think through the morning a little bit.
That's literally what I do. I'll think, okay, I've got, how's tomorrow going to look? And I'll even think about that time, like, okay, well, if I wake up and I've got, an hour before I gotta, do XYZ, take my daughter to daycare, oh, I could do this thing. And then what I also like to do is we all have those tasks that are, you don't necessarily like to do them, or, oh, I've got that one thing that I haven't done yet. I love just banging that out in the morning. It just sort of sets my day in such a better place because I'm like, oh, that annoying thing that I didn't want to have to do, I just did it at 7, and now I have the rest of my day to do, other tasks that are less annoying, or I'm more motivated to do.
Scott, how do you like to give back?
How do I like to give back? Great question. So I do like volunteering, and specifically, I've been volunteering for a nonprofit. It's called Erasing the Distance, and it's about mental health and making those conversations about mental health and how to talk about mental health more easy to have. And so they do lots of performances for high schools. They have events where folks share their stories. And my good friend's the executive artistic director there. And I just love volunteering and seeing all that, because I think for me, mental health is such an important thing to really talk about, and to sort of have those action plans and really raise that awareness. Because I think, everybody, your mental state, what we were just talking about, waking up in the morning, having a good day, how are you tracking your growth, all of that, that's great. And I find that mental health can really is an undercurrent for all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Bulletproof coffee helps my mental state a lot in the morning.
Exactly. That too, right?
No, Scott, I appreciate you and just giving back in that way. I think, our mental health is something that, man, most of us don't even think about, but it's a real thing. I mean, it is man, the more people I meet and the more, I guess the older I get to, I just meet more people that struggle with mental health. And I want to keep my mental health, as good as possible. Right. And just start doing research more around things like that, and for myself and family. But grateful for you giving back in that way. Grateful for giving back to us today, and really thinking through, LinkedIn specifically, how you have maximized that platform, and in some simple ways of how we can maximize it a lot better. We've posted every day for I don't know how many days, or I don't know how many years, but I've never maximized it in a way for that personal touch, personally. And I personally just dread spending time on social media myself. Like
I know.
I want to go spend the time with my
but
daughter and kids, or something else, right?
yeah.
Versus that. But grateful for that, for laying it out so it's more simple, in a way that we can all benefit from that platform in a big way. How can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Yeah. So, well, I'm on LinkedIn, Scott Hawksworth. So feel free to send me a connection request. Happy to do that. I'm also on Twitter, at Worth Hawks. And then just switching the syllables of my name. And then for Wealth Channel, it's wealthchannel.com. And you can also find us on YouTube, YouTube/wealthchannel.com. We're doing, new episodes of our podcasts every week, multiple times a week. Lots of clips and shorts and all that kind of great content, and we'd be just happy to have you check us out.
Thank you for being with us again today. I hope that you have learned a lot from the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're telling your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show and how they can also build wealth in real estate. You can also go to lifebridgecapital.com and start investing today.